Max Holloway is in Singapore to take on the Korean
Yeah.
Zombie. RC, listen to this, bro. You know what's crazy? I was flying back from Boston Sunday. As I'm getting to the Bay Area, I see some UFC workers, and I'm like, yo, they got this dude named Tony. He a big brother. I said, hey, man, y'all had to fly here because of the weather in Vegas. He's like, no, DC. We flew from Boston to San Francisco. They were going straight to Singapore, bruh. These people on the road for a month, RC. 4 straight weeks. They go from Boston to Singapore to Paris and then Australia. Back to back to back before they finally come home. That is a grind on the UFC. But this weekend they get a good one. They get the Korean Zombie and Max Holloway. How are you looking at this fight?
Well, I'm looking at it excitedly because of this. Max Holloway understands where he is when it pertains to the featherweight division. So in his mind, he wants to put on the most fun fights he could possibly schedule. And when you think about the Korean Zombie, who in his own right is a legend in the UFC, this is the perfect matchup. This is two guys who like to walk straight forward, two guys who enjoy putting on dynamic matchups in a place in their career where they aren't necessarily fighting for championships. And so for me, Max Holloway called for this fight after beating Arnold Allen. The UFC quickly obliged and got this scheduled, and we are getting an absolute slugfest for a fight night. And so for me, man, I'm just always excited to get to see Max Holloway go to work. I was actually watching a highlight on Instagram today. It's when he just kept screaming at you guys, I'm the best boxer in the UFC. And he's throwing no-look rights. He's get the head movement, not even looking at Calvin Kattar. And so I'm trying to see that Max Holloway show up again against the Korean Zombie. And we know the Korean Zombie wants a better showing against Max Holloway than he had against Alexander Volkanovski. But DC, for you, when Max Holloway makes this sort of call out that you know doesn't necessarily say we are getting a championship matchup after this, what does it say about a fighter like him who just loves to get in there and put on great shows?
I think Max Holloway is looking at the Korean Zombie matchup like, okay, we have both been here for a long time. I don't know why we haven't crossed paths yet. I know this is going to be a fun fight. I respect the guy, and I want to compete against him. Max Holloway is a former champion and one of the greatest featherweights of all time. I had him number 1 until I saw Volkanovski in the last fight. But it also speaks to the fact that he went in there and he fought Arnold Allen, a very young, hungry competitor who was making his way up the rankings. Max beat him. So the UFC said, you know what? We're going to give you the one that you asked for now because you stepped up and you beat a guy that no one else wanted to fight. But when the Korean Zombie sees Max Holloway, he goes, you know what? I want to fight a former champion. I never got to compete against him when he held the belt. I never had the chance to prove myself. The Korean Zombie has been close on a number of occasions. He beats Max Holloway. You start to get a little bit of a feel of your career being full circle, right? Like, on the right night, RC, you beat a guy like Max Holloway, you think to yourself, I could have been the man, right? And you could live with that because you want to be the best in the world at some point when you're a fighter. And if you could beat those guys that were the best in the world, you feel a little bit of that. So it's going to be an amazing fight night. This is one that's going to be unbelievably fun. And Singapore is a great place to watch a fight, RC. It's a great place, and I'm happy that those guys are finally getting a chance to fight each other.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing matchup, and everybody's going to be tuned in to see what Max Holloway does against the Korean Zombie. But you know who else tunes in, DC? Our very own Max Holloway. And he had some interesting thoughts about a UFC legend on the last fight night.
DC eating something. DC, what the hell are you eating, DC? You working. You working, DC. DC eating something. What?
DC, how you eating something in that fight, bro? What are you doing? Bro, you ain't that hungry.
Bruh.
You ain't that hungry,
hey, bro,
DC.
Listen, RC. Rogan brings these snacks every time, bro. He brings this beef jerky. So we sit there, we eat it, and we eat popcorn. Like, we eat popcorn. Dude, we're sitting there for 7.5 hours. But dang that Max Holloway. Hey, bro, I love the guy, but that guy constantly taking shots at me. Today I see an interview. He on one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He called me a sellout. Max Holloway is something else, man. That dude, if you got friends like Max Holloway, you don't need enemies, because Max keep coming for me. He's just mad, RC, that I'm the baddest man on the planet. He thought he had that title locked up. I got it, and he's struggling to deal with that.
Hey, I'm going to say this. My daughter, Logan, thinks you are the sweetest, most kind, cuddly teddy bear in the entire world.
Yeah.
And we always remind her, babe, that man is a killer. But I think that Max Holloway follows you and razzes you so much because he cares about you a ton. And what he also cares about is his native Hawaii. We all know that Max Holloway makes his residence in Hawaii, and we also understand what's been going on with all of the wildfires near Maui. If you want to help people affected by the Hawaii wildfires, you can donate now at redcross.org/ESPN. That's again, if you want to help people affected by the Hawaii wildfires, donate now at redcross.org/ESPN.
RC,
Well,
it's
DC?
very horrific what's going on in Hawaii. Beautifully done, man. I'm glad that ESPN is doing whatever we can to help. The UFC is also doing that. We have UFC Hawaii shirts also. All proceeds are going to the relief fund to the people that lost everything out there.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.